So you've heard all about compound interest. You know that it is the eighth wonder of the world. And yet there is still some uncertainty when it comes to, are your investment contributions enough to ultimately support the life that you want to live? This is the quick method to figure out, using general rules of thumb in a way that can customize them to your specific situation, to figure out if your monthly investment contributions are enough for you to use money as the tool to design the life that you want to live. The first step is to open up investor.gov's compound interest calculator. When you open this page, you will find a pretty easy drop-down menu, and my suggestion is for you to start playing with some of these numbers simply to get a feel for what each of them mean. Again, the goal for us is always to empower you, to give you a hammer, give you a tape measure, give you a tool belt, and then you're going to go and decide what you want to build with it. Now, in order to do that, let's start with an initial investment amount of $0. So I got nothing invested right now. And let's say that I simply contribute $62.50 every single month. The reason I chose that number is because I want to give you an example scenario. And in my example, I make $75K a year, and I am going to try to contribute 1% of my income to this investment account, because goodness, if I can survive on 100% of my income like I'm doing right now, then I can make it on 99% of that same income, right? I won't even notice that 1%, and I can make this happen. Now, lots more methods to how to figure out how to do that within your own cash flow, within your own budget, and your own money psychology. We provide resources on that, so continue the conversation elsewhere. In this scenario, I am going to say I'm 30 years old, so I am going to contribute that amount for the next 35 years until I'm 65 years old. Now, this is an assumption, because do I think that my income will increase over time, and that therefore, even if I didn't also try to increase the percentage that I was contributing to investments, that I would still be increasing the total amount just because my income is going up? Yeah, absolutely. So this is an assumption that allows us to get started with, hey, what amount am I going to contribute right now, today, to my investment accounts? Now, the estimated interest rate, I will have more to say on this later, but we are going to assume a very conservative interest rate that one might earn in a total stock market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund, or even utilizing a number of different index funds and bonds, and utilizing international funds as well to diversify the portfolio. I still can estimate this interest rate at 7%. It's a pretty good assumption for where I may be able to land. And what happens when I go to hit calculate in this scenario is I will see at the top of this calculator the amount that this portfolio has grown to in that 35 years. So instead of having an account that is only what I see down here on the lower lines at $26,000, the account has now grown to $102,000, almost $103,000. What you see on this lower line, that $26,000 number, that would have been the amount that you contributed over that 35 years by putting in that $62.50 every single month. So instead of having the total amount that you contributed, the account has grown because it's invested in the market. Now, the question is that enough for me to retire on? $102,000 in today's world, probably not enough for nearly anybody to be able to retire on. So the question is, should I increase my monthly contribution? And if so, where do I get it from? Well, there's one assumption that I did not add into my scenario earlier, which is I said that I made $75K a year and I'm going to try to contribute 1%. Well, I may have a 401k plan where the employer matches 1% of what I'm contributing. So what would that do if I did have an employer matching, and instead of contributing just the $62.50, they are also contributing $62.50, and that means I'm contributing $125 a month? Well, we can see that means my total amount in 35 years is now double what it was. It's now 207,000. Question though is, do I think that that's enough for me to be able to retire on again? And the answer is probably no at this point. So what could I do to continue to try to increase the amount that I'm putting into this investment account on a monthly basis? Now, a couple of things that I wanted to show you briefly here before we go into a specific example. One thing that I wanted to show you is many of you know about the cash flow spreadsheet. You can see the different tabs at the bottom here. Many of you have seen this welcome tab where you get to click on the introductory video to it. You've gone in and you've entered your total living expenses and income into the spreadsheet, or if you're in a partnership, you've entered it into these two columns and it automatically calculates the total for you both. In the total column, you've seen that there's a dashboard page which automatically populates many of our important ratios that we use as guideposts to figure out if we're on the right track and if we're moving towards our goals. And we can also fill in our net worth calculator. There's, of course, this resources page, which links to many different valuable resources. And in the 2026 cash flow system, we now have a fifth tab at the bottom, the investing multiplier chart. I wanted to add this in simply to show what amount of contributions would be needed if I earned a 7% return and if I earned a 10% return in my investment accounts if I started investing at each of these ages listed in the left-hand column. So if when I was 0 years old, I started investing and I was earning a 7% return, I would need to invest $72.67 every single month to hit $1 million by age 65. Now, you can see that in terms of an investment multiplier over here, I made 17.6 times my money by starting investing at age 0. Now, let's compare that just for example to starting investing at age 30. Well, if I started investing at age 30 and I only had 35 years for those investments to compound, I would need to contribute $602 every single month to hit $1 million by age 65. And that would mean that my investments had grown only 3.9 times. Whereas when I started investing at age 0, it grew 17 times. Hopefully this shows that the earlier we start investing, the better if we want to have a higher amount in those investment accounts when we go to retire. Now, those are the examples with the 7% return. You can see that if we were capable of achieving a 10% return, then it would be need to have even less of those contributions every month, and the multiplier would be much higher. Now, this isn't outside of the realm of possibility, but again, I'm going to save a few more comments on those until the end of this session. For those of you who are extra interested, that's why we're running through kind of the quick look at this right now so that you can calculate what you would need to do. Now, I wanted to briefly have an example here of $500 a month, just to show you what this looks like at $500 a month. We're now at $829,000. Go ahead and play with some of these numbers yourself as well. If you're 30 years old and you're doing $600 a month, we're going to hit almost $1 million at this point when we reach age 65. But the big thing I wanted to show you is an example using the cash flow spreadsheet, because I think this is where it starts to get real for many people. And this is an example using a couple, a partnership where they are married, they even have a kid, and they're trying to figure out how they want to design their retirement life. So the scenario is here. We could go through a lot with this scenario. And the whole point of the scenario is ultimately we use the numbers so that we can re-engage in having these rich conversations with our partner, with the people in our lives about how do we want to use money to design the lives that we want to live. So that's the point of these conversations. But here's how we look at the numbers themselves to see if they work for us. In this scenario, we can see Evan's a marketing specialist. He makes $75K. Eve is a teacher. She makes $50K. They're both salaried. They both have cars. They're making monthly payments on auto loans. They have a 3-year-old daughter. They can sometimes use the grandparents for childcare. They got a lot going on, right? They also have $8,000 of credit card debt at 22% interest. They have student loans. They're trying to figure out what should their long-term plan be. And if we dive into their cash flow spreadsheet, you can see there's a lot of numbers here, of course, but really what this is both of them have gone in and entered their income numbers. And then they've gone in and figured out, hey, what do we spend on a monthly basis on living expenses? Now, one quick quirk to the cash flow spreadsheet is that there is this column here where the miscellaneous category automatically adds 15% to your living expenses that are listed, because it is likely that you're going to forget some things. And so that adds a bit of a buffer into your system when you're planning out, hey, where do I want my money to flow on a monthly basis? If you're the type of person who you know that you have not forgotten anything, then maybe you can take that out. Maybe in this case, they actually have an extra $900 to play with that, like everything else, is kind of getting filtered into the guilt-free spending at the bottom here. Anything that doesn't get captured in these first three categories automatically goes down into the guilt-free percentage, because that's what's left over, and that's what you get to spend on yourself every single month. So if you know that number, it's very freeing for you. But again, for most people, I'm going to recommend that they keep this miscellaneous category because we've forgotten something, right? They may be wanting to work on their debt payments and figuring out the debt payoff plan. Totally fine. Once they have paid off their debt, that's another amount back into their cash flow. In this case, $200 a month back into their cash flow that they could reallocate from there. They could put that into their investments. However, the big thing that I wanted to show you for this particular example is that this is a partnership. And when we look at their cash flow spreadsheet, they are spending unequally in terms of their living expenses. So their total living expenses combined are at 84%. It's recommended that you get your living expenses to between 50 to 60% of your take-home pay. So they're high on that scale, but that might be something they can work towards incrementally over time by stating, hey, we're going to reduce our living expenses this year by 4.4%. And next year, we're going to figure out how to reduce them by 5%. And the year after that, so that's how we can take control of it over time. But the point here is that Evan is at 74%, whereas Eve is at 99% of what she makes every month is getting spent just on living expenses. And the question is why? And we can see that the answer is because they are splitting certain costs evenly, as in 50-50 instead of proportionally. So rent, mortgage, utilities, and also groceries are all getting spent 50-50. And that means that the lower contributor, Eve, just trying to keep up as best as possible. But check this out. Evan is contributing to a 401k, it looks like, with a 3% match. So he's got $155 going in. The company is also paying him $155. So in their scenario, that would mean that they have $310 going in currently. And I know that this example, they are 28 years old, so they have 37 years until they are 65. Let's just set the scene for them with where they're at now. They're going to end up with about $600,000 in their investment account when they go to retire. And Evan's got some savings going also. Eve doesn't. And both of them, they have guilt-free spending together, about $1,000 a month that they get to spend on whatever they want to. But almost all of it is in Evan's spending category. So that means Eve is probably having to ask Evan for the guilt-free items whenever she wants something. And it's probably building resentment between them. So what if we made a simple change of saying, hey, let's split things a little bit more proportionally? Let's say that Evan's like, hey, I'll take an extra $300 to the rent and let's have you drop by $300. That's going to even things out a little bit, 81 and 89% relatively here. Let's also say that Evan takes a little bit more proportionality to the utilities costs, and that they start splitting their groceries with a little bit more proportional split proportional to their income. So now what we see is that they have a much more even split of what each partner is paying for their living expenses. And we can see that that does filter down into their guilt-free percentages. Now, these two are 28 years old. They have a kid. They're young enough that I'm going to say, what if we were to tighten up your guilt-free percentage a little bit in service of you getting to have a richer, more full, wealthy life later on? Well, that would mean that Eve could now contribute to her 401k. Let's say that she also has a 3% match. So let's say that that comes out to about $110 a month that she can put into that investment account. Let's say that she's also going to start building up some savings as well. Let's say this is $55 a month into her savings. But the point is here that because she has a 3% match, the employer is also going to contribute $110,000 into her account. So that's an extra $220,000, sorry, not thousand, $220 a month that we can now add into our monthly contribution to this investment account. So we have $530 a month going into this now. We're going to run it for 37 years. And instead of having around $600,000 in their account, they now have $1 million going into their account. So do we think that they're going to increase their income over time because they're 28 years old? Yeah, absolutely. But right now, already with this baseline being conservative, they're going to have $1 million in the account by the time they're 65. That frees up some options. If they can continue to increase their investment totals, fantastic. But maybe they feel like they really want to have more in that guilt-free spending category. Maybe they want to put more towards savings for specific vacations that they can take with their daughter while she's young or with their parents even. It starts opening up conversations about how they can use money to design the lives they want to live simply by knowing that, hey, we're going to hit this $1 million mark by the time we're 65, even if we didn't increase our monthly investment contributions at all over the amount that we already have right now. That is the easy way to figure out how much do you want to be contributing into your investment accounts right now. Please go and play with the calculator. And please also recognize that at OnTap Credit Union, as a not-for-profit community chartered organization, we do this type of financial education with members and our community all the time at no cost. So please check us out. Find the link in the description to some of our free introductory coaching sessions and sign up for one. See what you think. Okay, now is the section that I mentioned before where I wanted to talk just with a little bit more depth about this idea of an estimated interest rate. You'll see in the description for this video even that all of this information is educational only in nature. It's for illustrative purposes only, because at the end of the day, we don't know what kind of a rate of return we're going to get in the markets out there. And of course, somebody's portfolio composition matters when it comes to the rate of return, but not as much as one might think. And so the thing to note here is that although we have seen rates of return of 10% in the S&P 500 historically, 7% would be a more reasonable amount to assume. And the other thing to note about the way the market works is that when we look at the market in the long run, S&P 500, go ahead and just type it into Google and you'll see Google creates a pretty good chart of this. When we look at this in the long run, we see that the market in general continues to move up and to the right as our economy continues to grow, as we as a population continue to grow, as we become more productive. However, what you'll see in the shorter time frames is that there's a lot of up and down to these particular pricings within the market. And so as we get to an even shorter term outlook here, past 6 months, we see that there is volatility. So the market doesn't only go up and to the right, it has volatility as it goes up and to the right. And so for this reason, we tend to talk about things like safe withdrawal rates where the idea is that when we get to retirement, we can withdraw a certain percentage of our portfolio every single year and still have it continue to grow. Now, the very general rule of thumb for that is that a 4% rate of withdrawal is a safe withdrawal rate. Again, go to Google and search for safe withdrawal rate, and you'll see all sorts of charts like this one, this is Nick Maguli, who is a fantastic resource also. But what you'll see in this chart is that if I have a 4% rate of return for 30 years, the composition of my portfolio will decrease or increase the chances of success. You'll see that in the case of the 4%, we're even at 100% stocks, we're at 99% chance of success. But if I was to have an 8% withdrawal rate and I only had 50% stocks, I'm at a 16% chance of that working for me. So there's all sorts of more in-depth math that we could go into to really get to the heart of what it is that we want to do in terms of our investment strategy. But for now, hopefully using the compound interest calculator gives you a general idea of what you're doing now and what it's going to add up to in the future. And if you can decide, just like Evan and Eve did, to simply increase your contributions, especially if there's a 401k or a 403b match, that's free money, then that can change your outlook drastically, automate those contributions, and go from there. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.